Hey guys, welcome back to Tech Canon. This is chapter 2, your software engineering resume. So I'm going to be going over a couple things that you should know about your resume and what should be on there and what should not be on there. We're going to talk about general guidelines for your resume. We're going to talk about how you should structure explaining who you are, how you should explain what you know, how you should explain all that you've done, and I'm going to go over others, just other nice to haves that you could have on your resume. At the later part of this chapter, I'm going to be using my personal resume, the resume I used right out of college to apply to tech companies, and the one that landed me my job at one of the big tech companies. General guidelines for your resume. The very first rule I tell people who are new to tech, just graduated college, designing a resume for a software engineering career is to make sure to keep it one page. For an entry level tech job, any resume that goes beyond one page is just limiting your chances of getting the job. There's no valid reason for you to have more than a page on your resume unless you have years of experience as a senior software engineer or some other reason. This is because recruiters are only looking at resumes for probably 2 seconds. That might even be a stretch. They're looking for key words, looking for any highlights for your career or any experience you've had in the past. Keeping it one page would also help you control what type of content you have on your resume and would help you focus on the most important ones while reducing as much noise as possible. The second guideline I have for designing your resume while you're starting out is to make sure to keep it clean. Please do not do anything unnecessarily fancy. This is not the time for you to show your design skills. It's for you to be able to highlight your strengths and how you can be of value to a team if hired. Now I'm going to be going into examples of what a bad resume looks like and an example of what a good resume should look like before we go deep into the contents of each of them. So still on general guidelines. Remember I said nothing fancy? Yes, so this is an example of an overly designed resume. It would probably be better in another industry. I don't know for certain. I can't speak to other industries. But when applying for a software engineering job, this is seen as more of noise than anything else. Number one, it's very much distracting. As you can see, there's a lot more going on with graphics there than with the actual content. Second, ATS software can easily discard your resume. What is ATS software, you might ask? ATS software is pretty much a tool that a lot of companies use when receiving applications for job positions. And this software helps scan resumes for keywords, looking for words that perfectly match or match as closely as possible the job description. So going with a lot of graphics can easily confuse software like this and reduce your chances of being selected even before it gets to a recruiter or hiring manager. A lot of automation is going on in this resume screening processes, so you want to give yourself the edge as much as possible here. Now, moving on from the distracting resume. So now let's take a look at what a good resume looks like. An example of a good resume to the left here is easy to read, friendly for resume scanned in ATS software. Of course, error free. You don't want your resume to have grammatical errors or spelling errors. Please make sure to check that as much as possible. Even use Grammarly or something if you have to. And a good resume focuses on your relevant skills and experiences, highlighting them as much as possible while reducing the noise. So this is all about general guidelines for resumes. I don't want to cover too much until we get into each section. Now, let's move on to the first part of the resume. For this part of chapter 2, I'm going to be going over each section of a resume, and I'm going to be using my personal resume, the exact copy of the resume that I used to apply to the big tech company which I work at right now. The very first section is all about you. Who are you? This section is simply where you tell us what your name is, your location. So, assuming it's not a remote job, it's to a location close to the job you're applying for, probably help here as well. Your phone number, how you can be reached via email. And one thing I like to include on my resumes is a link to my socials, but socials, not Instagram or Snapchat or anything. Links to my LinkedIn, for example, so they could view my professional page on there. For software engineers, it would be nice if you could include your GitHub as well, if you have some work on there. So whoever's reviewing your resume can click and go view some of the good work you've done. Also, if you have a personal website, this would be a great place to link it as well. So now we're going to focus on what you know. This is very important for job applications, as it could be easily used as a filter for the very first part of the resume screen. So when we're talking about what you know, what does that entail? So the first part of this is your education. You want to include whatever form of education you've achieved, whether you are graduated or not. If you haven't graduated, you place your expected graduation date. If you have graduated, then put your graduation date on there. After education, you want to focus on any courses that you might have taken that are relevant to the job you are applying for. I'm going to repeat that: courses that are relevant to the position you're applying for. So for a software engineering career, what I had on mine, for example, was courses that I took while in college. Concepts of object-oriented programming, data structures, algorithms, databases, web development. These are keywords also that a lot of resume scanning ATS tools would probably be looking for. So you want to try to include those if you have that experience. Now, the third part of what you know is what I like to call your tools, which is the relevant skills. So this is pretty much highlighting what you've learned and what tools you have in your belt that you can use to contribute to a larger ecosystem if hired. So for this, one of the things you want to focus on is programming languages. For example, you could include some of your strengths socially as well. But for software engineering, I like to recommend most people to include programming languages or concepts that they have learned over the years or just in the last few months, however far you are in your preparation journey. What have you done? So this part of the resume is the bulk of the resume, as you can see highlighted. It focuses on you expressing what you have done personally and how you have done it to achieve a substantial result. Let's dive deeper into what sections are part of expressing what you have done. So taking a quick look at what you have done, I've broken these down into 3 sections. 1, work experience. 2, your relevant projects. And 3, certifications. So with work experience, if you have any, this would be a nice place to include any internship experience you had, any boot camp experience you might have had. If you don't have any, that's fine. You could totally skip this section. But I'll just like to go over real quick how this is structured. So if you notice, everything I have on here is ordered chronologically from the earliest to the latest. So I have my internship, which I had summer 2018 on there, and the bullet points under each of these work experience sections should focus on what you did personally. Try to avoid explaining what the internship was about or what the place you worked at was about. You want to highlight what you did personally that contributed to some sort of solution that was then used by the company or by people within the company. This shows that you took initiative to create a product, you understood who the stakeholders were, and you were able to see a project to completion to being used by people within the company. Now, moving on to the next section, relevant projects. So you want to include any projects that you might have done personally over the last few months, years. For beginners, it doesn't matter how simple the project is, put it on here. You want to include as much of your personal experience on here as possible to show recruiters that you are actually doing the work, and update this as you go. So same as the section above, you want to order in this chronologically. If you have a link to, say, a website you built, for example, this is a great place to include that on here. And then under each relevant project, just like with work experience, I want you to explain specifically what you did to contribute to that project, especially if it was a group project of, say, like 4 engineers or 4 other people. You want to focus on what you did that contributed to the entire deliverable and how it impacted the results in the end. I'm going to take one of the ones I have here, for example. So what I worked on, the second bullet point on the relevant projects is Open Eyes. It was a hackathon project that I worked on while I was at a hackathon with about 2 other of my friends. And we built an application that helps interpret graphics to text. So the idea was to be able to help the visually impaired still be able to understand art and what's around them. Specifically, I worked on just the mobile application that took the image, sent it to the backend, and converts the results to speech. If you notice, that is what I included at the very start of my bullet point, and then later I start to explain how that contributed to the team's efforts. Now for the third section, certifications. This is always a nice to have on your resumes. If you've taken any certifications from anywhere in particular, as long as they tie to the position you're applying for software engineering, any programming language certifications, or any concept certifications, any cloud certifications, this would be a nice place to place them. You might be wondering why I titled this just others. Seems very simple. Yes, the reason why I named this others is because for software engineering specifically, this is just my opinion, but I feel like these parts of the resume are not as focused on as much as the projects and as much as the work experience and skills. So these are always nice to have if you have anything to put on there, but if not, then you can always skip this section. First part of the others is leadership experience that I had on my resume. So with leadership experience, what I tried to include here was some experience that's tied to my contributions to some sort of technology organization or body. For example, the first one was the position of Chief Technology Officer for my college's computer science club. And then the other was for organizing an event, a hackathon for my university. Besides leadership experience, another thing you can add to the other section is honors and awards. So here you can include honors and awards from your university, if you got accepted to some honor society, if you were added to some provost list or honorary list for your GPA. But most importantly, if you have any awards that are tied to your contributions to a project or some event you attended that was tech related, this is the best place to highlight them. So, for example, here I have some awards from hackathons I attended. So this was a very short chapter just going over my resume and how I advise you to structure your resume for applying for a software engineering job. High level, what we went over are guidelines. Number one, keep your resume at one page. Number two, keep it simple. Make sure it's clean, structured, and not distracting so that it's able to pass resume screening software. And besides that, we went over the different sections, explaining who you are on your resume, explaining what you know, explaining what you have done, and then other nice to haves on your resume. Thank you for coming back again. This was chapter 2, your software engineering resume.